Todd Blanche, he's going up for the permanent seat of Attorney General of the United States. Me personally, everything I've read about this, everything I've read about him, all of his interviews that I've watched, why is this even an option? I feel like it's a conflict of interest. I feel like it's in bad faith. I feel like the Attorney General, the office, if he's confirmed, becomes basically Donald Trump's personal law firm with the ability and the authority to execute using federal resources on his behalf. Am I wrong in that thought process?
No, I mean, that's essentially what's happening now. And the reason why it's so distressing to think that the Senate might confirm Todd Blanche is because they already confirmed him once. They confirmed him to be Deputy Attorney General, and he proved exactly how bad he was going to be in that role over the last year or so. And if we confirm him again, based on his track record to date, that really just shows that our democracy is not functioning and that the Senate is not doing their job of vetting candidates and making decisions based on judgment about who is suited for the role. Todd Blanche has shown time and time after again as Deputy Attorney General and now as Acting Attorney General that his client is Donald Trump. His first and always loyalty is to Donald Trump over and above the American people. And that is, as you said, a fundamental conflict of interest. He has not been able to set aside that conflict of interest and prioritize the interests of the American people. And that makes him fundamentally unsuited to the role of Attorney General. There are just so many examples of him betraying the interests of the American people because he is placing Donald Trump's personal or political interests ahead of them, that it really would be an absolute disgrace if the Senate were to confirm him, which is not to say that they won't do that.
So, so please explain this to me. Todd Blanche, I feel like it's a conflict of interest. Can you please explain to me and our viewers why you think that is the case? Because I honestly don't understand how this man, who is the private personal lawyer of President Trump, is really up for legitimate confirmation by the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, so there's a number of examples that illustrate the conflict of interest and how problematic it is. And one of them is the situation with Ghislaine Maxwell. So Donald Trump essentially deployed Todd Blanche as his fixer to help him solve the political crisis that the Jeffrey Epstein case has created for him. And Todd Blanche did that essentially by selling out the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and the American people. He orchestrated last summer this trip to visit Ghislaine Maxwell in prison in Florida and got her to say on the record nice things about Donald Trump, including that she never saw Trump do anything improper with Jeffrey Epstein. And that was solicited from her, it looks like, in exchange for transferring her to a minimum security prison, to a prison where she would not be eligible to serve her sentence under longstanding Justice Department policies. But Todd Blanche, as the number 2 official at the time in the Justice Department, pulled some strings, got her transferred to this nicer prison. She gave him the exonerating statements about Donald Trump. It was a win-win for everybody except the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and the American people. So that's just one example of Blanche placing Trump's interests over and above everyone else's. Another really glaring one is this settlement agreement that was entered into. Donald Trump sued for $10 billion over the leak of his tax returns. As Deputy Attorney General and now Acting Attorney General, Blanche has a fiduciary duty to us, the American people, to protect our tax dollars from frivolous lawsuits. Trump's lawsuit was utterly frivolous. It was about to get thrown out of court. And seeing that that's what was about to happen, Blanche decided to enter into a settlement agreement with Donald Trump to make sure that he walked away with what he was after. So the settlement had 2 components. One was the slush fund, which I know everybody listening has heard about. And that part of it is totally corrupt for obvious reasons. But the part of it that's even more problematic from my perspective as a lawyer is this release of claims. There was a separate part of the settlement agreement where Todd Blanche signed away the rights of the United States to audit, investigate, or sue Donald Trump in any civil matter by any federal agency, which people have interpreted to mean that we're not going to be able to audit him anymore for tax issues. But it actually has broader implications than that. It means that we really can't do any type of investigation of Trump or his business interests or his family members. We can't make any efforts to collect the money, to recoup the money that he has looted from our government through grift. And that applies into perpetuity for all of time. Blanche has waved away the rights of America to seek any type of legal recourse against Donald Trump. That is just an epic betrayal of the American people. And the only way that that can be explained is that he put Donald Trump's personal financial interests over and above the interests of the American people, which in my mind is all it takes to show he's unfit to be Attorney General.
So let me make sure I understand this. You're telling me the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America gave a golden ticket to a man, being completely, full transparency, a 30-plus time convicted felon of future prosecution when dealing with tax laws and all that, to him and his family. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, everybody in the Trump family, everybody in that whole orbit is off the hook. All of his associates, his companies, everybody. I mean, that is, Bobby, if this holds up in court, there are some legal challenges going on right now. And my hope is that this will not stand up to legal challenges. But if it does, then it's incredibly valuable to Donald Trump. I think this slush fund part of it, which got more attention, actually is something that Trump doesn't really care about that much because it doesn't financially benefit him. He wants to be able to say to his supporters, look, I tried to get you $2 billion and the court said no, or somebody said no and blocked it, but I wanted to do it for you and it didn't happen. And he doesn't really care at the end of the day because he's not profiting from it. But where he's profiting directly is from this release of claims, which can potentially, it's potentially worth billions of dollars to him. He and his sons are making money hand over fist off the presidency. And this release of claims is going to be used as a defense if we later try to recoup the money that he is stealing from the presidency. And that is, it's just incredibly valuable to him financially, as well as to his sons and his companies.
That is absolutely amazing. No accountability. Speaking of which, I want to circle back on something that you mentioned earlier, and I saw one of your well done YouTube shorts. The transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell. There's a little bit more to this too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Todd Blanche signed basically some memo that gives him the authority to move prisoners all over the country without having any check or balance, and forget the protocol and the statutes we've been using for generations. Can you go into that, please?
Yeah. So in the federal prison system, there's a really complex kind of bureaucratic way of deciding what type of prison you get sent to serve a federal sentence. And it's based on a lot of factors, primarily how secure does the facility need to be to keep the public safe. And if you're convicted of a violent crime, for example, you're much more likely to go to a higher security facility. If it's a nonviolent crime, it may be a lower security facility, but there are rigorous processes and procedures in place that determine where you go. And for example, somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of a sex offense, is not eligible to go to a minimum security prison camp because that doesn't protect the community. Todd Blanche orchestrated this prison transfer of Maxwell, and I think he saw that it's kind of hard to pull those strings because there's so many rules and regulations, and he wanted to make it easier. So he had the director of the Bureau of Prisons, who oversees all the prison facilities, who reports directly to Blanche, sign a new policy that gives the Attorney General the authority to override all of the existing rules and regulations and put people in the federal prison system wherever he wants. That is incredibly scary for a number of different reasons. One is that it means the president or Blanche can give special treatment to people who are political allies and friends. That means people who are convicted of violent crimes could be sent to minimum security prisons if they make donations, for example, to Donald Trump, or if they invest in his crypto business or whatever it may be. And on the flip side, it means that people he doesn't like could be sent to supermax prisons to serve sentences for nonviolent crimes. For example, people like the representative in New Jersey who was charged with protesting outside of an ICE facility, or people who are actually protesting ICE in Minneapolis and other places who are being prosecuted. If those people are convicted of crimes, Donald Trump could decide, you're enemies of the state, and direct Todd Blanche to put them in supermax prisons. So the potential for abuse and corruption is incredibly scary there, and is really just unprecedented in history. The Attorney General has never had that type of authority before, for very good reason. And we just have no idea how Todd Blanche might use and abuse that particular authority that he's now given himself.